Imagine a time when the Golden Gate Strait, the treacherous waters connecting San Francisco Bay to the Pacific Ocean, was considered impossible to span. For centuries, crossing these waters was a dangerous journey, with no bridge to connect the growing city of San Francisco to the rest of California. But what if I told you the Golden Gate Bridge was once called the bridge that couldn't be built? So how did it go from an impossible dream to one of the most recognizable landmarks in the world? Join us as VoyageVault presents the history behind the Golden Gate Bridge. The need for a bridge. The story of the Golden Gate Bridge begins in the early 20th century when San Francisco was rapidly growing. By the 1920s, it had become one of the largest cities on the West Coast, but it faced a serious problem. It was almost entirely isolated. Surrounded by water on three sides, the city relied on ferries to transport people and goods across the Golden Gate Strait, a narrow but turbulent stretch of water separating San Francisco from Marin County to the north. While ferries were useful, they were slow, unreliable, and couldn't keep up with the growing demand. San Francisco needed a more permanent solution. But here's the catch. Many believed a bridge across the Golden Gate Strait was impossible. The strait was over a mile wide, with strong tides, frequent fog, and high winds. Engineers at the time said it simply couldn't be done. Still, the idea of a bridge persisted. Visionaries like James Wilkins, a journalist, and later Joseph Strauss, an ambitious engineer, believed it could be built. But convincing the public and raising the money would prove to be just as challenging as the engineering itself. But what happened next? How did this so-called impossible bridge go from an idea to reality? We'll get to that in a moment, but first, let's talk about the man who made it all possible, Joseph Strauss, and the dream of a bridge. When Joseph Strauss first proposed the idea of a bridge in 1916, many dismissed him as a dreamer. Strauss was an ambitious engineer, but his initial design, a clunky hybrid of a suspension bridge and a cantilever bridge, left much to be desired. Critics called it ugly and impractical, but Strauss wasn't one to back down. He spent years refining his design, lobbying politicians, and convincing the public of the bridge's importance. Along the way, he assembled a team of brilliant minds, including Leon Moisseiff, who helped develop the suspension design, and Irving Morrow, an architect who gave the bridge its iconic Art Deco style and international orange color. Strauss faced enormous obstacles. The Great Depression hit in 1929, making it nearly impossible to secure funding. Banks refused to back the project, and opponents argued that it was a waste of money. But Strauss and his team didn't give up. In a bold move, they convinced local counties to pass bonds to fund the bridge, essentially asking the community to bet on its own future. It was a gamble, but it worked. By 1933, construction was finally ready to begin. But building the Golden Gate Bridge would be one of the most dangerous and challenging engineering projects of its time. Building the impossible. Construction of the Golden Gate Bridge began in January 1933, and it was a feat of engineering unlike anything the world had ever seen. Workers faced extreme conditions, freezing winds, dense fog, and the constant threat of falling into the icy waters below. To keep workers safe, Strauss insisted on innovative safety measures, including the use of a safety net, a first for major construction projects at the time. The net saved the lives of 90 men, who became known as the Halfway to Hell Club. However, despite these precautions, 11 workers tragically lost their lives during the construction. The bridge's two massive towers, each standing 746 feet tall, were built first. These towers would hold up the enormous suspension cables, which were made from over 80,000 miles of wire, enough to circle the Earth 3 times. The cables were spun on-site using a method known as cable spinning, a delicate and time-consuming process that required incredible precision. But the challenges didn't end there. In 1935, a powerful storm hit the construction site, threatening to derail the project. But thanks to the determination of the workers and the leadership of Strauss and his team, the bridge survived the storm and continued to take shape. Finally, after 4 years of grueling work, the Golden Gate Bridge was completed in May 1937. Its final cost? $35 million. An astronomical sum at the time, but a small price to pay for a structure that would become a global icon. A symbol of resilience and innovation, when the Golden Gate Bridge opened to the public on May 27, 1937, it was nothing short of a spectacle. This was the first time anyone had ever walked across the bridge, and the excitement in the air was electric. Over 200,000 people poured onto the bridge that day, men in suits, women in brightly coloured dresses, children waving little flags. Some people threw confetti, others danced, and a few even brought roller skates to glide across the pavement. By mid-afternoon, the crowd had swelled to an estimated 300,000 people. The bridge was packed shoulder to shoulder with pedestrians, with more gathering at each end, eager to join the celebration. The weight of the crowd was unprecedented. Engineers had designed the bridge to hold cars and trucks, not hundreds of thousands of people all standing still. Then, something unexpected happened. The bridge began to sway. Pedestrians at the center of the span felt a subtle but unnerving movement beneath their feet. At first, it was a slight shift, but as more people crowded onto the bridge, the swaying became more noticeable. Imagine standing in the middle of this massive structure, looking down at the churning waters of the Golden Gate Strait hundreds of feet below, as the bridge gently undulates under your feet. Panic began to ripple through the crowd. Some people stopped in their tracks, gripping the railings, while others hurried to the nearest tower, hoping to get off the center span. For a moment, whispers of fear spread. Is the bridge going to collapse? But here's where the brilliance of the engineering shone through. The Golden Gate Bridge was designed to be flexible, capable of withstanding not just the weight of cars, but also the forces of wind, earthquakes, and yes, even massive crowds. The swaying was a natural response to the unprecedented load, and though it frightened some, it was a sign that the bridge was functioning exactly as it should. Engineers on site assured the public that there was no danger, and slowly, the crowd's fears began to ease. Many even started to enjoy the odd sensation, marveling at how this bridge of steel could move so gracefully under such pressure. That day, the Golden Gate Bridge passed its first real test, not just as a piece of infrastructure, but as a symbol of resilience. The movement under the weight of so many people didn't weaken the bridge, it proved its strength. The bridge was not just a feat of engineering, it was alive, adapting to the forces acting on it, just as it was designed to do. The following day, May 28, 1937, the bridge officially opened to vehicle traffic. President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself pressed a telegraph key from the White House, signaling the start of a new era for San Francisco. The Golden Gate Bridge wasn't just a practical solution to the city's transportation challenges. It became a symbol of innovation, hope, and the triumph of human ingenuity during one of the most difficult periods in American history. The Golden Gate Bridge. Today, the Golden Gate Bridge is more than just a piece of infrastructure. It's a cultural and historical landmark that attracts millions of visitors each year. Whether you're driving across it, walking along its pathways, or viewing it from one of San Francisco's many lookout points, the bridge remains as awe-inspiring as ever. Preservation efforts have been key to maintaining the bridge's beauty and functionality. Engineers regularly inspect and reinforce the structure to ensure it can withstand earthquakes and the wear and tear of time. In recent years, efforts have also been made to improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists, as well as to reduce the bridge's environmental impact. The Golden Gate Bridge is more than just a link between two shores. It's a symbol of what's possible when vision, innovation, and determination come together. And standing at its edge, with the wind in your hair and the vast Pacific stretching before you, it's impossible not to feel inspired. And that's the story behind the Golden Gate Bridge, a bridge that defied the odds, connected a city, and became a global icon. What's your favorite story about the Golden Gate Bridge? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our deep dive into the history of Chichen Itza, another incredible feat of human ingenuity. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to VoyageVault for more amazing stories from around the world.